Strange, an X-Files Rewatch podcast. I'm Nick.
And I'm Kim.
And I do believe we have some form of news.
Yes, I do have some news. This is on behalf of the X-Files Museum in Saratoga Springs. If you go to their website at the moment, which is xfilespreservationcollection.com, that's all one word, they are currently having a second anniversary sale, which will run until the 30th of April. So that is 20% off all purchases from their online store, which are over $25, but it excludes admission to both their museum and to FanFest. So do check that out if you want to go and get your hands on some merch.
Cool. I understand also people got excited about Gillian Anderson saying she might return to the X-Files recently.
Yeah, I did see that on Twitter. She didn't exactly say that, it should be noted. I think people got a bit excited, but what people picked up on an interview that she had was that she originally has always said that she would not do it again, and now she was commenting on the potential Ryan Coogler X-Files, and saying that she wouldn't be averse to having a cameo.
Which is, it's fine. I mean, she could be Dana Scully again, or she could be someone else, and we all go, hey, it's her. So this week we're going to do something a little bit different, because we finished off the X-Files game. It's all up on Patreon if you want to go and see us flail wildly and die repeatedly over it.
What's our Patreon address?
Patreon.com/thingsargettingstrange. Where you have access to our entire Let's Play and our review of Mulder and Scully by Catatonia for as little as $3 a month.
And coming up next will also be our look at the first of the adult X-Files novels, which is Goblins.
Which I don't think either of us have read for years.
No, it has been a while.
But we're going to try and do the X-Files game like we do any other episode, even though it's a lot longer when we found a cut-down version of it, just to review.
I think even when you cut down the gameplay, it's about 2 hours long, wasn't it?
Yeah. The X-Files game, directed by Greg Roach, written by Richard Dowdy and Greg Roach and Frank Spotnitz from a story by Chris Carter. Released on the 11th of June 1998. Guest stars, because of course there are some extra people in here. Well, sadly, no one seems to have done much of anything. So we have Jordan Lee Williams, who is now deceased, we discovered from watching our recap of the whole thing.
Very sadly.
Very sadly, is Craig Willmore. He's actually been in the X-Files before. He was in Syzygy, uncredited.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a basketball player. Sean G. Griffin played Armitage Shanks, who was in Malcolm in the Middle, and Shogo Mobile Armor Division.
Fair enough.
Which is a anime-style first-person shooter. And Robert Isaac played James Wong. Not that James Wong, a different James Wong, who was in Arrested Development and Sliders.
Oh, okay. So are you able to give a brief synopsis of the game?
I am, hopefully. And this is the entire my own work, because no one has a sensible plot synopsis of this plotline as far as I can tell. So, Mulder and Scully go missing during an investigation near Seattle. Craig Willmore is given the case to locate them by Walter Skinner, who assists. After checking their motel and finding Scully's laptop, the pair check a warehouse Mulder called previously. They find blood and lead-lined boxes. Outside, a fisherman denies knowing anything to do with the case, and a car flees the scene. Skinner then returns to Washington, D.C. Willmore's partner, Cook, offers to help have Scully's laptop examined by computer crimes. Later that night, on stakeout, Willmore sees men from the warehouse removing cases from a hidden compartment in the floor. The next day, Willmore finds an unconscious Cook at work, and Scully's laptop has gone missing. The blood in the warehouse is determined to be Scully's, and James Wong, the fisherman, is now dead. Willmore goes to see the crime scene and meets with Mary Asadorian. The pair search Wong's boat, and they find a slicker for the Tarakan, a vessel in dry dock. The Tarakan's crew were all killed in a mysterious fire that only affected the exterior of the ship. Inside, they find new fingerprints have been applied over old fingerprints, and during the exploration, Willmore finds a strange lead sphere and a captain's log. The coroner reveals that Wong's body was riddled with cancer and that Mulder and Scully visited her days earlier to see the Tarakan crew. Those bodies are now missing. Asadorian insists on working with Willmore on the case, which she believes is to do with plutonium smuggling. The fingerprints recovered from the Tarakan turn out to belong to Cook, who then tells Willmore he is being followed. Willmore stakes out the warehouse once again and sees a truck for Gordon's haulage and finds a note for a rural route address and a code number. Asadorian wakes up the next morning with a tape of the trucker killed in the same way as the crew of the Tarakan. The damage to their bodies cannot be explained by simple radiation exposure, but from an active blast of radiation. Willmore and Asadoran go to Gordon's hauling and discover items shipped between the warehouse and the rural route. But when they try to leave, a man locks them in with a bomb. They narrowly manage to escape and it explodes, destroying all evidence. The next day, Cook prepares for a raid on a warehouse. He says the case has been cracked in Willmore's absence, and Wong's murderer is Smolnikov, a notorious Russian smuggler. The pair raid the warehouse, though Smolnikov denies any knowledge of plutonium and involvement in the case. Later that day, Asadoran arrives to confront Willmore about his raid that morning without contacting her. She overhears a phone message left from Mr. X. Willmore meets Mr. X, who tells them that Mulder and Scully are separated but still alive, but Willmore must now find a Jane Doe in Gold Bar. He gives him a alien stiletto. Asadoran overhears the clues, and the pair go to the Presbyterian Hospital in Gold Bar. Willmore guesses that the Jane Doe is in fact Scully, and they are able to convince her they are honest. Scully tells them of her side of the investigation and how Mulder believes of alien involvement. Willmore and Asadoran go to the rural route and find a burned train car with the same code number found in Gordon's haulage van. An unhomed man gives them a videotape showing a strange medical experiment. One of the men removes his mask, and Willmore, Asadoran, and Cook are able to ID him as a military surgeon. The lone gunmen then call up Willmore to explain the boxcar and the aliens and how they intersect. They tell Willmore to go to the surgeon's house and then move on to a secret base in Alaska. Willmore heads to the scene and sees a man leave. Inside, he finds Mulder tied up. Mulder explains how Scully got to the hospital and how the Block Isle is involved and is seeking its ship. Willmore contributes with the location of the secret base. Mulder, Willmore, and Scully head to said base, where they find radiation-burned people. Mulder and Scully are then separated. Mulder is infected by the black hole sometime during proceedings, and Willmore and Scully work to force it out of his body. It then infects Cook, who has revealed all of his treachery and his involvement in the case from the beginning. Willmore throws a stiletto to Scully, who is able to kill Cook. Later, they are debriefed by Shanks, and Scully thanks Willmore for all his help. Willmore heads home to meet with Asadoran, and on the way meets X, who tells him to keep the stiletto because he may need it in future.
Thank you. Though I guess we should get to in a moment as well that ending is actually variable.
Yeah, okay, there's a few
that was
points of it.
based on the ending we got.
And the one we saw. So this seems to be the good ending as far as we can tell.
Yeah.
It's difficult to know where to start. I mean, this is... it's not a good game, is it?
This was actually made towards the end of FMV games being very in vogue in the late 90s.
Yeah, and FMV games are one of these things where I never really got into them because you just heard people admonishing them at all times, because it's watch this really strange, badly acted, badly filmed, badly produced film, and then do some puzzles to watch the next bit of bad acting.
Yeah. Some of them did have really big names. I mean, you had Ripper had Christopher Walken in it and things like that.
Oh yeah, it's not to say there aren't some of the weird ones, and I think also Gimli from Lord of the Rings was in that one as well.
Yes, he was. John Rhys-Davies.
John Rhys-Davies. So yeah, you could get the bigger budget ones, but in general it was watch the very variable work and do some really horrible puzzles.
Yeah, which you can really see in the gameplay of this one as well, is it is incredibly tedious in places.
Yes, I would say it's not as bad as the puzzles from what I understood of Ripper.
Oh, Ripper is incomprehensible.
Because some of those were, oh yeah, you look at this this calendar and they were born in whatever date Capricorn's for, and therefore you've got to make
Aquarius.
Aquarius, and then you've got to make Aquarius star sign out of this pinboard or something.
In a completely different area, you just had to make that kind of connection that you had to create the Aquarius constellation based on a calendar, or it might have even been a birthday card you saw somewhere else. Yeah, they were really... I went through a stage of playing through a bunch of old ones. X-Files isn't one of the best, but it's by far not one of the most complicated ones either.
No, and it also makes me think a lot of things that people don't have as much patience for these days, like Myst.
Yeah.
Because Myst is very much a throw in the deep end, you don't know what you're doing, but you're wandering around a very nice looking scenery.
Mm.
But the actual gameplay is turn this level 3 times, go 4 screens across, and press this button.
Yeah.
And if you don't do that, you can't go any further forward, but nothing's going to tell you to do that.
I remember having Myst as a kid and just being completely confused as to what I was supposed to do with it.
Yeah. I think I once played a bit of Phantasmagoria and probably shouldn't have done as well because I think I was like 12.
Oh, the first one?
The first one.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I possibly think it was a family friend and they didn't think we were going to get very far or to anything troubling. So, yeah, we just poked around and I just remember it was primitive 3D CGI and it's a case of here's a mansion. I don't know what I'm doing.
The second Phantasmagoria is a lot more fun.
Well, I think the second Phantasmagoria is just camp from start to finish, really, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's just absurd.
It's pretty tame by modern standards, but at the time it was quite shocking because there are scenes of, like, in the world's tamest bondage club and stuff like that in there.
Yeah, with a bit of nudity thrown in as well.
Yeah.
Spoony has a decent sort of let's play kind of thing of him going through Phantasmagoria too, with commentary and things.
I heard that, Curtis. But anyway, we digress a bit, but that's the kind of era that this game came from, where people push this to be the next big thing of having, instead of CGI graphics, your absolute realism because you were using film.
Yeah, and there are a few other weird cases at the same time, because you also had Toonstruck, which is a more obscure point-and-click like Monkey Islands these days.
Yeah.
Toonstruck's weird thing was it starred Christopher Lloyd. Didn't just star Christopher Lloyd, you had an actual filmed Christopher Lloyd walking around cartoon environments. So this was like a kind of weird interim bit.
I see.
And that was a lot more engaging. That was also astonishingly difficult to play, that game. I got very stuck on that one. People
complain that video games have gotten easier, and you can kind of see the argument based on these sort of things.
It just needs to be not as cryptic. The other thing we should know, and I think it's come up a few times, is FMV games are kind of coming back in vogue a bit, but people are doing different things with them.
You thinking the likes of like Heavy Rain and stuff like that?
Actually, no. It's specifically a one developer who first produced something called Her Story.
Okay.
Which is basically you have a bank of data of police interviews with this one witness. And basically you can scrape through that evidence to work out what's going on and solve the case.
Oh, I see. That's clever.
And then he's gone on to do this a few more times. The second one's called Telling Lies, and I can't remember what the gimmick about that one is. The third one sounds fascinating, though, because it's an unmade film that you have all the raw footage of. And you've got an entire film negative. And then you've got all this extra stuff that's filmed around it, and basically you can jump between all these different tracks to follow the story through.
Okay.
So someone has tipped it on its head, basically. You can do FMV games, you just can't do what they were trying to do in the 90s because it doesn't work.
You're closer to the 90s model is the like of what we'd kind of called a action game at the moment. So you've got these action puzzle games like the Dark Pictures Anthology, like Until Dawn, like Heavy Rain. That's more the feel of what an old FMV game was like.
Yeah, but without the weird clunky integration, because you don't have to pause the live action to do something gameplay stuff. You can have it flowing into each other.
No, it's a lot more like playing a movie, the new ones. They're very quick time event heavy and things like that.
Yeah, and it just CGI has made it a lot more bearable.
Mm.
Whereas we had to play through something stuck squarely in the past.
Yeah, it was certainly very clunky controls in this one. Even, we were playing the PlayStation version of this, and even that, just the controllers were so clunky, just moving from frame to frame, trying to find evidence that was very hard to see on a photorealistic background, and the god-awful combat with the slowest crosshair in the world, where you literally had one chance to shoot first before your character got killed and you had to start again. It was very frustrating to play by a modern standpoint.
Yes. I mean, we also shouldn't leave out the fact that the interface changes how it interacts at times. Because when you look at something, you tend to get a few different interact icons, aren't you?
Mm.
So you get the hand-grabbing electricity is interact with it. There's look at it, which is the eyeball, and there's lips, which is talk to someone.
Yes.
And generally that's fine, but you also have the added mechanic of you can give items to people sometimes. 99% of the time, it won't do anything. If it's the gun, you'll shoot them. And if it's an alien stiletto, you can show it to Scully once, and it's fine. If you do it again, you will kill her.
There are some interesting ones because you begin the game as well with all of your, FBI toolkit in your inventory.
No, you don't. You have to go and pick it up, because if you don't do that...
Yeah, you do have to pick it up, but it's things like the gun, the lockpick, the evidence kit. One thing it gives you is the handcuffs, which you literally do not use once in the entire game.
Nope. I think even when you arrest someone, Cook does it instead.
Yep, Cook does it instead, and if you try to use the handcuffs, you get a game over. So even then, In most games, you will find a single use for every item in your inventory, but this one just gives you some trash things that you will never ever find a use for.
And we can't leave out the fact that you get a pry bar, one of the single most useful items you can ever have in an adventure game, and Mr. Willmore leaves it on the floor of a warehouse and wanders away.
After its first use.
After its first and only use. It's like all the times we could have done with it afterwards. Nope.
The game is full of little fun Easter eggs as well, because, like you commented with the gun, you can literally shoot everyone in the game, and it always gives you a varying little cutscene of you being arrested or murdered or something else.
Well, sometimes, because I think you managed to shoot Skidder one time, and that worked fine, and you got arrested. And then you tried it a few other times, and I think you got fired instead, which was and you didn't actually kill him either. There
are apparently some nice Easter egg ones as well. There's one scene in the game that we didn't see where you can shoot a random passerby if you're fast enough. And it then cuts out to this Easter egg of the production crew running in a panic or something like that. So there are little hidden death endings as well.
That's good. I mean, we could talk about the deaths, because there are a surprising number of them, and I think this is kind of like the appeal of Dragon's Lair, as far as I understand it, was seeing the different ways that you could die.
Yeah.
So we got your bodies pulled out of the river, which is it's not that fun, and that one happened a load of different ways, because you could be shot and that happens to you.
Yep.
There was just the gravestone one is frankly hysterical. There was you've been killed, skeletonized, and identified by your dental records.
Yep.
There were the baffling times we got ourselves arrested.
There was one where we got blown up and there was just a shot of Cancer Man outside smoking.
Yep. There was one where Mulder decided to irradiate us with the black oil.
Yep.
And I might have been it, but it was like the circumstances leading to some of them were you pulled a gun on X to see what happened, and he killed us with a stiletto.
Yeah.
And then again, you also tried to follow him, and then he just turned up and killed us with the stiletto. The stiletto he handed to us 2 minutes ago.
He's got a stock of them. So what did you make of the plot of it?
Well, I do remember at the time there was excitement before it came out, and then when it was revealed to me the FMV game, people got a bit, yeah. But I think they didn't let on until way too late that, yeah, you're not getting much Mulder and Scully in this. You're going to play this other guy.
So the game was actually filmed between seasons and while they were preparing the movie, apparently. So that explains that there was not a lot of Mulder and Scully because they were too busy. Hence the introduction of Craig Willmore as our playable character, who's about the only person you see for 80% of the game.
But the problem, well, there's so many problems with Craig. I mean, for one thing, it's this isn't what we signed up for one thing.
I think he does a perfectly good job, but no, you've got an X-Files game, you expect it to be about Mulder and Scully.
I think absolute worst, you'd have the Lone Gunman.
Yeah. You do have the first couple of little investigations you do as Willmore. You have, like, Skinner as a sidekick, but then he kind of walks out the plot after that.
He does. And as well, we also note there's the cameo from Pendrell, which is quite nice.
Yeah.
There's a cameo from Lone Gunman.
Yeah. You can see them twice, in fact, because you can phone Frohickey quite early on and he refuses to speak to you, and then they get a proper cameo at the end.
Yeah, I think it's the whole you get to control Craig Willmore is not what anyone wanted to see in this. And we can talk about other weird things, like how the Seattle office of the FBI has 3 people in it.
3 employees, yeah.
3 employees. 3 officers, 3 employees, no one else.
I guess it's a problem when it gets to the end and Cook turns out to be the traitor as well, as now they're down to 2 employees.
Yeah. And it's just this tiny little office, it's just one corridor with a monolith down one direction.
I thought Willmore actually does a fine job, even though he's not what you wanted. He's perfectly good, he's perfectly well acted. Cook, on the other hand, is blatantly the villain from the first time he opens his mouth.
Yeah, he didn't sort of give a good, trustworthy impression.
I think we had him pegged almost instantly.
We did.
Everything he did made him seem more suspicious.
Well, I think it's when he sort of, Scully's laptop's taken and he's found unconscious, it's just impossible to look at him and go, yeah, I honestly believe that someone broke in here, clubbed you over the head, and absconded with Scully's laptop.
And it's especially as you get later in the game when there's the supposed SWAT raid on the warehouse, and nobody shows up, and Astadorian hasn't been told about it, even though Cook swears he's told her. Trying to make you suspicious of Astadorian, of course, but you're it's
not.
Cook.
I mean, you've just been blown up with Astadorian. I mean, you're not going to sort of really sort of worry about her.
The tone of the gameplay does apparently change based on the options you take, because you can change the mood of certain scenes with your kind of witty comebacks.
Okay.
So I think a lot of the playthrough we had was leaning towards being paranoid and conspiracy-minded. But if you lean more to him being a family man, you get more scenes about Willmore's ex-wife and things like that. And scenes of him interacting with children.
Let's talk about Craig Willmore a bit, because the man is weird. I mean, just the whole... We've got the ex-wife backstory, which I don't think we needed.
We didn't really get it in our playthrough because we didn't lean into it anyway.
No, but we know it was there because we found the letter and we found the diary and...
The divorce papers.
We found we could ring up the ex-wife and she would refuse to answer the phone.
Yeah.
And it comes up in conversation a handful of times as it is. And when we watched the video through, we discovered there's a whole load of other extra conversation options that relate to it.
Yeah.
But we should also talk about his apartment with its baffling decor. Because, you know, he's got the Ramones poster, fair enough. He's got those frankly terrifying portraits that we don't know why they're there.
Yeah. Just
strung around. And he owns very little. And he's got the weirdest alarm clock in the world.
Yeah.
That sounds like a phone. We thought the phone was ringing a few times.
No, it was his alarm clock. Yeah.
That was just confusing. But yeah, there's him, there's Cook, who we pegged as kind of villainous from the word go. No one bothers to double check any of his stuff, and everyone just accepts his excuses, it seems.
Yeah.
Despite the fact they're really weak, like, oh yeah, I accidentally left fingerprints on this crime scene. I totally called the police this morning.
It was especially those fingerprints, as it was inferred they were on top of other fingerprints, meaning he'd come back and things like that.
Yeah, that was just, what? Why?
And then your other major character is Mary Astradorian, who's the police officer.
Yeah,
who you can, depending on how you play it, kind of wind up dating her by the end of it.
Sort of. Well, sort of. We can certainly get her.
She's making late night trips to his house by the end of it.
Yeah, and she doesn't show up in the end sequence, which feels a really missed opportunity, given we did try to push this romance and that didn't go anywhere. And then then also she's like a stealth ninja because X is meant to know if someone's hanging around, and she might successfully overhear an entire conversation he wouldn't have wanted her to.
Mm.
That felt weird. I think it's not unfair to say that the people directing the game footage are definitely not the regular X-Files people and don't quite know what they're doing.
Yeah, it vaguely follows the Black Oil conspiracy. It's a bit of a rehash of Piper Maru plot.
Yeah, with some bits and pieces from Colony and Nisai thrown in.
Yeah, because it's got the train cars and things like that too.
I meant, like, the Lone Gunman will show up and they'll be... Yeah, it's recognised as Lone Gunman, though Byers has shaved recently, and that's really distracting.
I know you have problems getting past that.
But it's just the way they're acting isn't quite right. So something has not been expressed to them, or they don't have the patience to do this properly.
Yeah.
I think Gillian Anderson's doing her best, and I think Mulder's kind of just in it for the paycheck.
I think it's really a game that it's not worth playing if you're not familiar with at least the first 4 seasons of the X-Files as well.
No, it's a terrible introduction.
As by the time we as experienced X-Files fans have gone onto the Terracan ship and seen the kind of Hiroshima radiation burn shadows in the wall, you've got a pretty good idea of what we're up against here.
Yeah, well, to be fair, you should have got that from the opening sequence.
Not necessarily that it's the black oil.
Well, maybe not, but I think that was my first impression, because of the flash of bright white lights, because it's only that all the things from Fallen Angel have done this.
Yeah. Or it could just be people being abducted in a bright light.
It could have. Well, I think we could also get onto the whole... By the end of the game, what happens in this game isn't very clear.
No.
Because I don't think we're ever sure what Mulder and Scully are doing in this warehouse.
At the very start, no.
We also don't really understand how they survive being shot at.
No.
Or why they're being shot at.
No.
Or then Mulder calls the Seattle field office. They send more assassins, so he dumps Scully with radiation poisoning in a Presbyterian hospital. And then what happens to him is unclear until he gets abducted by Roche and tied up in his house in Alaska.
Yep.
And we've got other weird things, like Willmore is convinced that Mulder and Scully are dating the entire time.
And you can repeatedly press Skinner on this, who will just keep responding with, "No, I don't think so.
Okay, so
Not to my knowledge."
What about Skinner, though, is basically you ask all these really sensible questions of Skinner, and every single one of them is, I don't know. Aren't you their boss? Shouldn't you know some of this?
I'd also like to know the answer to that.
What? What case were they working on? I don't know.
The game is full of nice little Easter eggs for fans, though, as well, because, I mean, early on you can find a copy of Jose chunks from outer space, which you can show to various people for different reactions.
Yes, although it technically belongs to the motel, it turns out.
Yeah, but I believe you can also give it to Wong and a couple of other characters.
Do they actually do anything, or do they just go, I don't want that, like always?
No, you can actually get scenes by giving it to different people.
Oh, okay. That'd be kind of fun.
If you don't hand it over to the motel owner.
Well, we didn't know that was going to happen.
And also, you've got little things like the run of the Keystone Cops from Syzygy is playing on the motel TV. There's a flyer, I think maybe again in the motel you can find, that's about the zoo from Fearful Symmetry.
Yeah. I think we ragged them up as well, because you can ring up a whole load of phone numbers and you can't get anyone who's into the phone. We can get answer phone messages.
Yeah.
We know in the end that the Tarakan, coming from Georgia, saw lights in the sky and probably saw a ship come down. That the black hole kind of got on board, I think.
It must have done because it destroyed the crew.
Yeah. But I mean, we don't know if they sort of deliberately hauled the ship out of the sea or that was an incidental thing.
I assumed they hauled it. I think that was the assumption, like in Piper Maru where they dredged the alien ship.
Well, yeah, this is what I was going for.
And then much like Piper Maru, this thing is trying to make its way back to another ship, which is what we've got to assume is behind that locked door in Alaska, because we never see what's behind it.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was a bad move as well. There's no way to ever see what's behind that door.
No.
And no one apparently is very curious about what was behind that door.
No matter what ending you get, because as previously noted, there are variants depending on whether you kill or incapacitate Cook, basically.
Yeah. The Tarakan has got the black hole, brings it into the dock. The black hole kills everyone. That's fine. The lead spheres and the boxes full of powdered lead. What was that about?
I assume that's how we were transporting the oil, to be honest.
I know, but then if it had already got out and it was infected people and wandering people around, did they get it back into the sphere or something? And then it got out again?
I don't know, but I assume that's how we were transporting it.
I can see that. It's just
because he was, I forget his name, but the mafioso sort of guy was adamant that they weren't transporting anything radioactive, and I guess you wouldn't necessarily know that the black oil was radioactive.
Oh, true, but he had nothing to do with it anyway, though, because he was just framed. Because he was an art smuggler.
I thought he was still the smuggler. He just didn't know what he was smuggling.
No, he had nothing. He kept saying, "What are the warehouse? So you're standing in a warehouse."
Oh, so that was just
that was Cook lying.
framing him.
Yeah.
I thought obviously you would say what other warehouse because you're not going to admit to your radiation smuggling ring.
Well, it's possible debatable point, but I took it as he was being pretty honest in the circumstances.
So yeah, the plot is a bit difficult to follow, a bit of a mess, and a bit of a rehash of things we've seen already, so there's nothing entirely new here.
No, and allegedly it's got a production code, so it actually counts as an official episode, but where you'd place this, I don't understand. Oh, actually, we did forget about one of the deaths is, actually not the game over sequence, but what led to it was Scully being infected by the black oil as well, and, just murdering us.
Yeah, there's another variant ending you can get where, in fact, there are several variants. What we got, if you watch our Patreon, is the good ending. There are variants. There's one where you're forced to kill Mulder in there. There is another one where there's a scene where you can stab Cook with a cattle prod. If you shoot him instead, he's not around to get infected by black oil at the end, which means Willmore gets infected and Scully has to stiletto you. So it just ends with your tombstone. And there are a few others like that. I think you can lose both Mulder and Scully, you can lose Willmore. You may or may not wind up in a relationship with Asta Dorian, depending on whether or not you tried to kiss her earlier. There's a lot of little variables there.
There are. I think the problem is ultimately they are so small because no matter what you do, you will spend an hour wandering around a military base, which is like the worst layout in the world.
Where there is occasionally a soldier hiding around corners just ready to instantly kill you as well.
Yeah. And you've got to get, well, that was the way. At some points you can get the drop on him. Other points you must take the exact right route or he will murder you instantly.
I seem to remember on some routes, if you get the drop on him, you turn around and get immediately murdered by an infected Scully anyway.
Yeah, well, that was the one where if you walk into one cupboard and it doesn't matter what you've done, the soldier will appear behind you, Scully will shoot him and then strangle you.
Yeah. That last scene was just horrendous. It took us so many laps to figure out what we were supposed to be doing.
Yeah, and again, you could say this is like true of a lot of things. Like Phantasmagoria 2, famously, the last puzzle is absolutely baffling.
Oh, yeah, it's horrendous.
And makes no sense whatsoever, and is full of weird alien goo and
It
things.
took me ages, and it was just sheer trial and error figuring out the last puzzle, because there's nothing to show you how to do it.
No, and it does again, I think it comes back to your point about photorealistic landscapes backgrounds and trying to navigate around them is sometimes the door is a door and sometimes the door is a series of lockers that do nothing.
In the case of the X-Files, it varied by scene. Some of the scenes weren't too bad to navigate, but the absolute worst ones were the first time you visit the warehouse and the Terracan.
Yes.
Where, to take for example the first warehouse, one of the things you have to find to proceed is a cigarette, which is on the floor in the warehouse. So you have to shuffle through one step at a time, but you can only interact with the cigarette if you're facing in a certain direction, looking at the scene from a certain angle. And we knew it was there from... I could remember it vaguely from playing the game through maybe 12 years ago that thing drove me to distraction. So that's the only reason I knew it was there to begin with. And it took us so long to find that cigarette.
Yes. And I think also really badly, on reflection, that did nothing. It didn't come back.
No.
It was sent to that lab for analysis. We got absolutely nothing back from that. It was not referenced again. It wasn't actually relevant. You can make the case that it's the same one the rat is eating in the very start of the intro sequence, and it's what Cook smokes if you let him kill you.
Oh, yes, of course he does.
But in terms of the actual investigation, it never comes back in.
No. But it's one of those games where you have to interact with everything or you can't move on.
Yeah, and we should mention that the help system, which we found in the cut together one bafflingly, is you just go to Shanks and hand over your PDA and he'll say, oh, you need to do this, this, and this. Oh, this looks good.
I think you might have missed something over at the warehouse sort of conversation. Yeah.
Actually, that's the other point then. So we'd forgotten about this completely from the previous playthrough. So it's like, go to this warehouse on day one, and you have to find the cigarette butt, the bullet, and the cases full of powdered lead.
Yeah.
Skinner then sends you to stake out the warehouse that night, and you see some people taking boxes out of a secret compartment and driving away.
Yeah.
Then you have to go back the next night again and find the Gordon's haulage truck. And in terms of actual basic plot progression, that truck is the only thing that actually moves the plot forward.
Yeah.
And we don't know what they're moving from there to the rural route where the train car is, which they burned yesterday thanks to the in-homed man, who has only one of the only verbal puzzles in the game, and it's atrocious. I mean, he's great, but...
He's one of the best characters in the game.
He's absolutely perfect, but his puzzle is abysmal. Oh, I've got something you might be interested in. Guess what it is? What? You want money? Just give me the thing and you can have money.
You really can't get it wrong as well, because he'll just keep saying, no, you're wrong, until you pick the right answer.
Yeah, it's a baffling decision, really.
Mm.
We can also talk about health and safety on this game, or how there didn't seem to be any. When Craig climbs up the telegraph pole and this thing shudders from side to side as he's going up a bit.
Oh, that's what you mean. I was more concerned about the blasé way we treat radiation sickness as a mild inconvenience in this game.
That too. So we'll do that one as well. But yeah, he climbed up that pole and we're going, it's just sort of shaking left to right. It's just going up it.
Yeah.
Did he die making this game? And when he comes back down again, it's like, oh my God, no one prepared the set. You just went out to this train graveyard and said, oh, you can climb up that, that'll be good.
It didn't look safe, no.
But yeah, the in-game universe is, Scully is being treated for a mystery illness that no one identifies as radiation poisoning until you pop up and say, is it radiation poisoning?
Oh, which way she says, oh, that would explain my symptoms.
Scully?
But the same way you give a piece of evidence to your guy in the lab, John, to analyse, and he starts to develop flu-like symptoms, then later phones you up and shouts at you because he's discovered it's not the flu, it's radiation sickness. Then you never hear from him again, so we've got to hope John's okay.
Yeah, we'll hope it's okay. But then also say, he says, oh, you sent me to a hot environment, and it's Willmore and Asadorian spent ages crawling over that ship and rubbing themselves on lead spheres and everything else, and they're fine! Why are you susceptible to this? And there's other weird things, like James Wong is just distracting name to give your character in the next whole thing. Why have you done this?
I thought it was cute. Apparently Mary Astadorian's named after one of the directors of 1013 Productions as well.
But that's not nearly as distracting for the audience, is it?
No, it's not a name you'd recognise like James Wong.
Yeah, you spend the whole time going, is it him? Is this a cameo?
Yeah, I googled it to see if it was a cameo, but it's not. That's not James Wong. It's an actor using that name.
Yes. Well, an actor who has that name.
Yeah.
Let's go back to that whole thing of their smuggling black oil around. Is the whole thing with the Terracan's meant to be relatively recent, and he's got tumours from prolonged exposure to plutonium?
So we've got to assume they've been doing this for a while.
Yeah, and I think the other problem with it is, okay, so Willmore isn't an X-Files person. That's fine, and he's brought into a weird supernatural circumstance.
Which doesn't immediately seem supernatural. It is just a missing persons case to begin with.
Yes, and that's fine, and you can go along with that to a point. But I think it's the fact that we keep getting sidelined into plutonium smuggling all the time until X shows up and says, "This has nothing to do with plutonium smuggling. Just stop thinking about it." And that's what I was going, "Oh yes, clearly they're doing plutonium smuggling." Maybe, but then I don't know how that connects to anything else anymore.
It is the logical answer.
It is. Then it turns out it might be black oil, maybe. So one thing I do think was a mistake a bit is the verisimilitude at times.
Okay.
So we made a joke out of this in the Let's Play, but when we got the medical examiner's opinion back in about one of the autopsies, oh no, it was the bomb. We got someone's assessment of the bomb come in, the bomb that blew up Gordon's College. But remember, you had that email and you started reading it, and it kept on going and going and going and going and going and going.
Like most of the evidence in the game, yeah.
Yeah. Well, when we discovered at one point, we tried to read. There's a example of the silver bullet for the Lone Gunman's newspaper, and we tried to read that, and there's too much text in these things.
There's a Bible in Scully's room as well, which is not relevant in any way, but you can read a good chapter of the Bible.
Yeah. Oh, and Craig Willmore's diary. There's an enormous amount of text for his diary in there as well. And it's kind of nice, but it's all
I think
irrelevant.
In a well put together puzzle game, there would be some reason to read it. There would be a clue that would require a passage from the Bible to solve it or something like that, to explain why that would be there.
Yeah, like Scully's password. I mean, it's really odd that Scully's laptop, as an object you can have and you bring back to the office and it then gets stolen. At no point does you have to get into it.
You never find it again either.
No, it's just reported it's recovered from his apartment later.
Mm.
And there's a computer in the secret base as well that we discovered we could interact with. And the best you can get out of it is a map of the area. You can't do... Everything else is password locked and you can't ever get the password.
Mm.
It's just a frustrating little thing. But I think Gordon's Haulage, though, as an example of the weird puzzle design and just narrative design in general. So we've gone to Gordon's Haulage for some of the flimsiest plot reasons ever, other than just...
We're following up some kind of CCTV footage where we see a Gordon's truck driver, after seeing the Gordon's haulage truck at the warehouse, apparently erupt in a bright white light and irradiate some people.
Yeah.
So we follow this by going to the Gordon's haulage headquarters.
So we arrive, poke around, we find another book in Cyrillic to match all our other logbooks in Cyrillic we've got. And then a guy with black oil eyes shows up and throws Craig across the room. And then shuts him and Acidorian in a small room, and Acidorian finds the bomb. And we tried to defuse the bomb because we thought, yep, that's going to be what you got to do. Dead. So you got smoking around outside, having a cigarette. His only appearance in the game, he's just lurking there.
Apparently you can only see him if you're going down the paranoid track as well. So some people may play it through and not see him at all.
This is odd because we weren't, because we took comedy the first one. Because our response to Why is Skinner here is checking on paper clips.
I'm going on what Wikipedia told me was the paranoia responses.
But anyway, so we saw all kinds, we got blown up. And then do you remember the solution to this?
Yes, I do.
So Acidorian, if you don't find it already, Acidorian will sort of say, there's some tools over here. And you can pick up a shovel. And you take a shovel and you can't, destroy the bomb. You can't pry open the door. You can punch a grating out of a door and crawl through the gap. And that is how you survive a bomb in this game. But then I also remember the bit after that is the explosion's gone off. Acidorian and Willmore pick themselves off the floor. Then the man with the black oil eyes just stares for a bit. And then we cut away from him and that's it.
And they can have their little romantic scene then where you almost kiss her.
And she refuses because you've just nearly been blown up and they should wait to more coherent time.
Quite rational, to be honest.
Quite rational. I mean, it's never going to come because we're going to piss her off the next morning. But anyway. Also, we won't, so Cook will, but point stands. And it seems like that. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to get over the fact we managed to kill Scully. Or that and the same interaction thing, though. So it's like that one where we accidentally killed Scully was not only just that, it was we had to say the right things to Scully in this conversation. And not get ourselves arrested for reasons that never made any sense if we picked the wrong choice. And you have that puzzle thing as well, where X says, go to this Presbyterian hospital in Gold Bar and find this Jane Doe. So you go there and say, oh, we want to see the Jane Doe. And the nurse says, what's her name? And the response there should be, well, we don't know either. She's a Jane Doe. And so if you say that to them, that's the wrong answer. If you claim to be her brother, that's also the wrong answer. If you say she's Jane the Scully, that's the right answer. You've got to tell Skinner is her superior.
Yeah.
So that's wonky enough. And then we've got to talk to Scully and give her the right answers and say, we're friends. We were sent here by someone. The man who told us not to tell anyone that we'd spoken to him, but we've got to tell Scully this, otherwise she will sound an alarm and we'll be arrested.
You've also got to describe who spoke, which I'm sure X would be really down upon.
Yeah, it's why the correct option is we've got to say, a black man sent us to see you. Which, to be fair to Scully, she knows one black man as far as we know. But still, it feels a horrendous way to phrase things.
Yeah, I got it wrong like 4 times. I'd saved the game right outside the room in the end, because I got it wrong so many times, picking the wrong options to get Scully on side.
Yeah. But the thing that really got us was that wasn't enough. So you do all that, and then within a very, very tight time limit, you've got to scroll right the way through the inventory and pick the stiletto out and click it on Scully. So the first time you do this, Willmore will hold up the stiletto and say, the man gave me this, and Scully will back down because she recognises the stiletto. Somehow, I'm not sure if the timelines actually match for this. And she'll actually sit down and talk to you and explain everything. If you try and show it to her again, you won't show it to her again. You will, in fact, kill her. And that was a shock when we managed to do that one. That also got us arrested, I think. Was that arrest or was that just fired? I think it was arrest.
I think that was arrested, that one.
Yeah. I'm still not sure why we got 5 for them. But follow me. To some people that might sound that's not a big problem, but follow me here to one of the last puzzles of the game. Cook has been infected by the black oil. He has Willmore at gunpoint, telling him to turn the key to open the blast door to get to the ship we never get to see. And Scully comes up behind him, and the only way through this scene is we've got to throw the stiletto to Scully. And how we do this is we click on the stiletto in our inventory, drag it over to Scully, and this time we throw it to her. So the interface is so inconsistent.
Yeah.
Absolutely infuriating.
My favourite part is the bit that leads up to that scene in which Willmore just blasts the guy in the back of the head in cold blood. So, just to read into that, the first time you come to that blast door, it is Mulder that is trying to unlock it, at least if you've played it through the way we have an incapacitated Cook. There is another guard there who is doing the second key, because it's one of these things where you've got to turn 2 keys at the same time. You walk up behind the second guy and just blast him in the back of the head.
Oh no, we had to specifically use the gun on him. We couldn't. It didn't do it for us. We had to kill him.
But that is the only way to start the sequence, which then becomes a small chase as you have to lure Mulder into a place where you can trap him, which causes the black oil just to escape his body.
Yeah, and Scully just blinks and nods at this, doesn't really think anything of it somehow. And I suppose that's one thing we haven't got to. So what were we going to say?
We're going to go with the other time I killed everyone.
Yeah, save that for a second. I was going. One thing about the stiletto as well is I think we couldn't get over at the time was, the only time this series has ever used a stiletto is to kill colonists and hybrids.
Not people infected with the black oil.
Yeah, no one's done that, except in this game. And it's not even one of these I don't quite think they justify why nothing else will work on them, but stabbing them back in the neck will, when it's just the black oil, and presumably they're vulnerable if you catch them off guard. And quite why Cook didn't cook everyone with radiation when he had the chance, and why Mulder doesn't when he's trapped in the room. Because if you don't shut that door quick enough, he will irradiate you so you stand. Go on, what was the other time you killed everyone?
Yeah, it just dawned on me when I was thinking about it, is there are really 3 shootouts in the game where you have to use the absolutely abysmal first-person controls on the world's slowest gun.
Yes.
And if you get hit, it's instant death. One is the warehouse SWAT raid, which is unavoidable. You do this supposed raid with Cook where you blast through 6 of these poor Russian smugglers. And
we'll also point out that some of these are just unfair.
Yeah.
Because there's one at the bottom of a spiral staircase, because you have to go up a staircase to come down a staircase to the other side of a barrier, and the guy will just shoot you no matter what happens. So you have to shoot him before you go up the staircase.
The other compulsory one, as noted, was when you blast that security guard in the back of the head at the end of the game.
Yeah.
But in between, there is the scene when you found Mulder in the house in Alaska. You go outside and there's 2 NSA agents there. I did not realise there were two options of what you could do here. So if you watch our Let's Play, you will see me gunning down these NSA agents with due abandon, which is fine. And now I think about it, I feel there should have been some comeuppance for that later in the game of, you have done the bad thing. The other option is you could have just run away and hid in the woods.
Yep. In a scene that really strangely is... I don't know how to describe this, except that when you see it, you can't unsee it. It's like it's either referencing Ralph Bakshi's Lord of the Rings, or it's somehow precursor to Stephen Jackson's Lord of the Rings, because he hide in a hollow in exactly the same way as the hobbits do in all the versions of Lord of the Rings. It's really kind of weird.
And it's really lucky that the guys just didn't take one step forward, in which case they would have seen him.
Yeah, it was strange.
But yeah,
choice.
as far as I can tell, that's considered the correct thing to do, is to not just murder two guys like I did.
To be fair, though, if you don't murder them, they will skeletalize you and then clean your bones. So they're not exactly nice people either.
Apparently, if they track you down in the woods and you die that way, I'm not sure how you can mess it up because we didn't see it, you actually get a little scene that shows that Cook is the villain, which otherwise you don't find out 100% until the very last scene of the game.
I think we've covered most things.
Yeah, I think the well of fun trivia about this game is running dry.
Yeah. I mean, we had, it's not to say we didn't have fun doing this. It's for completionists, shall we say, the game. If you really must experience every X-Files thing ever, there's some bits and pieces in here for you. On the other hand, you might as well watch Piper Maru again to get mostly the same effect.
It's not terrible. It'll probably take you 6 or 7 hours to play through, start to finish.
Yeah, slightly less than that if you have a guide. There are some very good, very specific guides about exactly what you have to do to brute force through this.
Mm.
None of it's going to help you with the shooting, though, because you're going to have to do that yourself regardless.
Yeah, and the controls, I think we're spoiled in modern games now. The controls are not good for the shooting. It's not designed for it.
No.
I just found it slow, especially when you had to select the gun off your little inventory bar first and things like that. You had to be so precise with that timing. The other one, as we mentioned before, the scene at the end where you have to trap Mulder, you have to be very, very quick to get through the thing you're luring him to yourself, turn around and hit the button next to it.
Yeah.
Which on very slow, clunky controls means that you don't have a lot of time to do this in.
Yeah, and just before then he irradiates you and everyone dies and you have to go back around again. And next for regular reviews, it'll be Hungry and Millennium.
Though we are taking 1 week off. We're on holiday next week, but the week after it will be Hungry and Millennium.
Yep. In the meantime, if you'd like to get hold of us, our email address is thingsagainstrange42@gmail.com.
You can also find us on social media. On Twitter and Tumblr, it's @GetStrange42. On Mastodon, @GetStrange42@universedon.com. Or on Facebook, you can find us by searching for Things Are Getting Strange and X-Files Rewatch Podcast. Additionally, if you're not sick of my voice right now, I also have a channel on Twitch TV called AdverseCamber42 and a connected YouTube channel of the same name. I stream 3 times a week, Mondays and Wednesdays at 8 PM GMT and Saturdays at 5 PM GMT. I'm currently playing Wolong Fallen Odyssey on the Twitch, and I also have a separate stream exclusive to YouTube at the moment. It's a silent stream with no dialogue from me, that one, and it's a Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. Please check them out if you're interested.
We have Patreon, patreon.com/thingsagatingstrange, where you can find our Let's Play of this game, for example. And all our future weird non-TV and non-film X-Files bits and pieces. So, as said, it'd be the novel, the other video game, the board game, the comics, or board games, I think, collectible card games, virtual tours of the museum when we get that sorted, and anything else X-Files-y related.
And it's from as little as $3 a month, was it?
And it's from as little as $3 a month.
Nice.
Our theme music is envisioned by Kevin MacLeod. You can find that on Compotech.com. Licensed under Creative Commons by Attribution 3.0. Thank you all for listening, and until next time, please remember...
You're a dead man.